welcome to Create Expectations. I'm Tom Kennedy, and in today's episode of Introduce Yourself, we catch up with Nate Goyer of The Vinyl Guide. Nate shares the touching story of how the death of a close friend and fellow record collector led him to start his podcast, and the incredible legacy he has created with his friend's collection. In just a few years, The Vinyl Guide has grown into a podcasting behemoth, bringing together musicians and industry pros to chat all things music. As Nate puts it, speaking to his heroes is his hobby. He also shares some amazing records from his collection, everything from the Monkees to the Melvins, and there are some serious grails in there. So here is Introduce Yourself with Nate Goyer. But yeah, Nate, thanks for joining us. Nate of The Vinyl Guide. You are The Vinyl Guide.
I am.
It's awesome to have you on and have a bit of a dig through your musical bio. But before we get into your selections, tell us a bit about the Vinyl Guide podcast, how you sort of got into that and how it's grown into this beast with these really impressive guests. I mean, I was just looking through the list. Recently Sendog from Cypress Hill. I mean, you had Ian Anderson was one that I really loved. I'm a massive Tull fan. Ahead of of Jethro Tull's latest album. I mean, how have you you've created this monster with a life of its own?
Well, thank you. Look, the Vinyl Guide, it all started back in 2015 with the unfortunate death of a very close friend of mine who he and I used to hang out and talk records, listen to records, and just have these conversations, which I absolutely loved. And when he passed on, I really didn't know what to do with that. I felt like I needed some sort of, relief valve. And I've always been an IT nerd. I used to be into broadcasting way back in the day when you could actually make a living out of it. So I thought, you know what, let me just start this podcast and let me just see what happens. And I have no expectations, but it's a bit cathartic. And I started down the process, just sharing information, and it's just picked up all this steam. The Vinyl Guide, the name Guide, is not meant to be like I'm guiding people. It's more like, I'm just pointing out different things to look at. I'm not an authority. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I'm a hardcore record collector nerd. I like the stories behind them. For some reason, my brain hangs on to all these facts about vinyl records and first pressings. And it's just kind of my little adventure, through record collecting. And up to now, I think we've had about 350 episodes.
Wow.
Interviews with artists and, people in the industry that would know stuff about records. And, I've been fortunate enough to be able to get these people on the show and sit them down for a bit and talk to them about the rare records of their career. And it's been phenomenally successful. And I'm still pretty humble. It's pretty weird, just thinking about, these different, just speaking to my heroes. That's my hobby. Some people on the weekends play golf, some people, work on their car. I speak to my heroes. That's my hobby.
That's really cool. And you yourself, you've been collecting for 40 years, I think. So, I mean, you must have amassed a pretty awesome collection yourself.
I think I did. I'm not sure if I've been collecting for 40 years. I've had records from a very young age. I was the youngest of four, and my older brothers and sister were significantly older than me, 6, 8, and 10 years older than me. So when you're the youngster in a group like that, your older brothers and sisters they're like gods, right? Immensely influential. And so they were going through the rock music of the 70s, and I was just watching and on, and I wanted to be part of it. And what was important to them was important to me. And so from a very early age, I was getting records, sometimes not by choice. As the youngest.
The hand-me-downs.
I got plenty of hand-me-downs, but I'd also get things like it'd be Christmas time or my birthday. And my brother and sister say, oh, wow, I think Nathan would like some Aerosmith. And I'm like, I don't know, like, okay, let's give him a happy birthday. Here's the Aerosmith record. Hey, let's put it on. So they would get what they wanted. But yeah, I was happy to be that instrument.
You got an education at the same time.
Full on education.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I started developing kind of taste. I like this. I like that. Obviously, it was shaped by them. But yeah, from a very early age. Also, my dad, he would take me out every Saturday. We would go to, I remember, Skaggs Drugstore in Missouri. And every week, just for going on the trip, he would buy me a 45. And so I'd get to pick from this massive wall of 45.
Cool.
Sometimes I knew what I was getting. Sometimes I didn't. So, that whole experiment.
Yeah.
It's really deep in my DNA, Tom.
Do you still have any of those 45s from back then?
I don't. No, not any of the 45s. There may be a couple scattered at my mom's house or something. I do have some of the actual albums. Like I have my very first record album.
Well, let's start there.
Okay.
I know the introduce yourself, maybe you're still thinking about, but let's start with your first record, given that we're in that period of your life.
Sure.
What gem do you have for us?
Well, I'm not sure which one was actually first. Hang on, let me grab this. Feel free to edit my digging in time.
I'm just admiring the wall.
Oh, yes. So I can't remember which one came first.
Yeah. Those are quite contrasting records.
Yes. The Monkees, the debut album from the Monkees, or Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
I think I got Dark Side of the Moon when for my third birthday. Wow. And I remember I asked for it.
Wow.
I remember because I liked the song, all you can touch, all you can see, whatever they call it. It's Brain Damage.
Brain Damage.
So I remember asking for it, and I remember getting it, and I remember the posters on the wall, and literally I got it when it came out in 72.
Wow.
But and it's funny because the song Time has a skip. This copy here, this exact copy, a skip. And I always grew up with that skip in my mind.
So you thought that was part of the song?
Well, I knew it was.
Or it was, yeah.
I actually knew it was a skip because it kind of the timing kind of changed.
Yeah.
I knew it was, and I knew if I put enough nickels on the head shell of the record, it would force it through.
Right.
So, but early on, I knew that wasn't the tactic. But whenever I hear Time and it doesn't have that skip, it's very strange to me. And I actually think the Monkees one, though, I think this one actually came first because I could see all my writing on it, like all these little faces that I drew on it. I'm not sure, kind of.
Yeah, I can see that.
Thomas beat to hell, too.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's,
but that tells a story in itself, right? I love when you buy a secondhand record and it's it's been on a journey.
Here's this one. You can see where I probably tried to write my name there. You see it?
Yep.
And it looks like a child's handwriting. So it's probably the Monkees is probably my first one. I don't know if I got it or maybe it just it was in the house and I just, it just became mine because I played it that much. But yeah, this.
You've still got it.
Still got it. Yeah. There's a couple of them that and interestingly enough, I have a few records from my collection as a youth. And I actually have text inside this in case, when I'm no longer on this planet.
You're right. Yep.
My kids or whoever grabs this will know what the house.
So that's the significance of it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good. That's it's important because you don't know what's going to happen to them once you're gone, right?
Exactly. Not like everyone's going to be looking through it, but every record. But yeah, it's
they go, the Monkees. We don't want to keep that.
Yeah. It's like a message in a bottle. Maybe something will happen to it. Maybe it won't.
Yeah. Sometimes when you buy a secondhand collection and there's newspaper clippings or, old concert tickets. I love that sort of stuff. I've got an AC/DC album that had the newspaper clipping of when Bon Scott died stuffed into it, which I've sort of kept aside. So, yeah, I love those little sort of treasures that you find.
I bought a John Lee Hooker album, and John Lee Hooker is immensely, important to me. I bought a John Lee Hooker album and outslid, the records were perfect, and outslid a tour program that was autographed.
Wow.
And, the story in my mind is, the person, they went to go see John Lee Hooker, they probably sold this record there. They took the record and then they got to meet John Lee Hooker. And I don't know if you've ever seen John Lee Hooker's autograph.
No.
Not the greatest penmanship. I mean, right. I don't think he was properly educated. I think he probably had I would imagine maybe a, 7th, 8th grade education or something, maybe less. And so his handwriting is, very childlike.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's, it was a whole autographed tour program around here.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we normally start, we digress there a bit. We normally start with a record to introduce yourself, which is always a difficult task, and people take it different ways. But if you had to choose one from your collection, what album would you choose to give people an idea of who you are?
Now, it's funny because being familiar with your show and the question, I knew it was coming. And I was like, fuck, which record am I? What am I going to do? And then I started thinking, okay, well, occasionally I'll ask people a similar question, like, okay, they call it the asteroid record, right?
Okay.
You hear an asteroid's coming towards Earth. What record do you put on? What's the last hour? What's the last thing you want to hear?
I like it.
And your question is slightly different, but that's kind of how I framed it. And I was really struggling with it until about 20 minutes ago when I was going through my record collection, pulling some things. And I want to show you some real rare ones, today. But while I was picking it, and then I saw the record that I'm about to show you. And I was like, of course, this is the record. This absolutely defines me. If anyone wants to summarize me in a single piece of polyvinyl chloride, this is the one to do.
Okay. Great choice.
The Stooges Funhouse.
Yep.
Oh my
okay.
God. Yeah. This speaks to me on so many different levels. And this is an original pressing, actually.
Wow.
I grabbed this because this is actually a demo one. You can probably see the little sticker there.
Yeah. For demonstration use only.
So this record is just phenomenal. Even the impact of this record on the world has been, it cannot be overstated. And it's got punk, it's got funk, it's got rock, it's got, you could put this on and everyone will groove to it. So look, I love the Stooges, love Iggy Pop. The first album is great, but there are some tracks on there that you kind of got to plow through a little.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Funhouse is everything that's great about the Stooges, just distilled into what I believe is some of the best recorded moments, not just of Stooges and Iggy Pop, but of rock.
That's an awesome. It's funny. I actually just picked up a copy of Raw Power this week.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's funny. I've had Stooges on in the house this week.
Yeah. Raw Power, again, fantastic. Audio wise, it's not, it's not as pleasant to listen to as Funhouse.
Yeah.
To me, look, Raw Power is probably a second, it's in the top 10, but Funhouse, I think, needs to be at the very top.
And did you pick this up recently, or what's the story? I mean, it's a first pressing, so is it something that you sought out?
Not really. In fact, I wasn't as familiar with the Stooges until about maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
I really started getting back into record collecting around 2002, 2003.
Good time.
I'd moved to Australia from California, and I was really looking to kind of simplify things a bit. I had all these CDs and I was like, whatever. But I just always remembered how fun it was to listen to vinyl records and how much of a good time I had doing that. And so when I kind of did this whole life restart in Australia, I started picking up records, and obviously they were pretty cheap back then.
Yeah.
A lot of demand for them. And it was just something that I loved doing. And it just had such a place in my heart from my youth. And I'd take these trips back to California to see my friends and family. And I'd go to the different shops, and I just had such a great time doing it and hanging out with my best friends over there. And we go to record stores and we, just hang around all day and shoot the shit and, talk music and talk whatever and records. Those memories are those are the ones to base a life around. And so I think at some point someone mentioned to me first pressings actually held their value a lot more, I remember thinking, okay, well, maybe I should keep my eye out for a few things. And, a Stooges first pressing back then was maybe $100, and a regular Stooges record, a recent pressing was probably 20.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to treat myself to a couple albums. And this was one of them. And I'm so glad I got it.
Yeah. Jeez. Certainly holds its value.
Yeah.
Where were you digging in Sydney back then? It was sort of Utopia, Vintage Record, those sort of places?
Vintage Record. That's one of my favorite shops on earth.
Yes. Same. That's
Vintage Record. They've always got a lot of records that they don't have anything new, really. And so everything is focused on old, and there's a story around every single one. I love Utopia too. Like I'll go there when I need like the new Black Sabbath box set or something like that. Egg, I always pop into when I can. There's a few others in Newtown, I think Repressed. But what I really do is I tend to wait until some of the record fairs.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, Newcastle, Hiss and Crackle.
Yes, I've seen you post about them before.
They are phenomenal. They are. That's if they were my local shop, I'd be broke. But they always have great stuff. And if you go into Hiss and Crackle, another thing I like, two things I really love about Hiss and Crackle, they have a stage there where they have bands play every weekend.
Wow.
So they have local bands come in for a couple hours, they play, and sometimes two bands a day, right? And so it's a real and that's one, because you can go in there, you can hear some live music. And they also have a huge section that's just for local, just Newcastle bands. And
oh wow,
it could be current bands, it could be the Silver Chairs or whoever. I know they're not called the Silver Chairs, but I'm saying the Silver Chair like band. But it's just local only. And they also, for any local band that brings in their record, they give the band 100% of the money. They make no profit off of it. They're just there for exposure. So Hiss and Crackle is not so much just a record store, but it's like it's a community kind of for musicians. And it's in these sort of days, it's hard to find a store that you really love. But for Sydney, I love Vintage Record, and for Newcastle, Hiss and Crackle, that's a shop that, again, is just Newcastle's very lucky to have that shop.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check it out at some point. Yeah. They have a record fair up there as well. I think you've posted about that. There's the Glebe Record Fair in Sydney. I presume that's still going as well.
Yeah. Glebe Record Fair is great, even though I caught COVID there last time. And the Hunter Record Fair is always very good. There's some other record fairs around like Kiama and where's the other one? The Coal Coast. Is that Kiama? Yeah, there's one kind of down. Oh, there's the Wollongong one. But, where I live in Sydney is a pretty far drive. It's about almost 2 hours. And it's going to be pretty selective. But going up to Newcastle, it's about an hour. Going to Glebe is about 45 minutes. But yeah, Glebe is the high water mark when it comes to Australian record fairs.
Do you do much selling of your own?
I used to. I used to go there because I'd get my seconds and thirds, right? Like I'd get a really nice copy of Funhouse, and then I would sell my okay copy of Funhouse.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes I would actually, I'd have records that I would, come across, and I would buy and sometimes even just give them away.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Like if there was a collection, or sometimes you see records that are, out on the street or something like that, or I would get those, and then I'll take them to a record fair and I'll just give them away, especially to young people. People look broke, it's like, here, try Van Halen. Here,
You're continuing the tradition.
I'm trying to. But then over the last years, obviously with COVID and everything, it's once they did the Glebe Record Fair again, I did the first one, phenomenal show. But then I wanted to go back and just be a civilian. And this last Glebe Record Fair, I think it was in April, I went, and I just went to buy and flip and shoot the shit with people. And I had such a great time. And I got a phenomenal batch of records. But yeah, unfortunately I got COVID there too. So part of the risk. Yeah,
totally. So you mentioned that Hiss and Crackle, they do some gigs and they have some live acts. So that takes us to a seamless transition to our next subject, which is your favorite live album. Obviously, the last couple of years, it's been pretty hard to see live bands. So I found myself going through my collection and listening to live performances as kind of a fix for that, to replace that the gigs. Thankfully, everything's coming back now. But talk us through your choice here for your favorite live album.
So live albums, I do enjoy them, but they could be a bit of a crapshoot. There's some live albums that are just fantastic, and others that are like, you could tell it was a bit of a money grab. Two live albums really come to mind, the ones that I play the most. I'll start with UFO, Strangers in the Night. And here we go. This has got to be and I don't know how much was re-recorded, how much is truly live, and what it sounds fantastic. And especially if you can get a UK first edition of this, Maron, so good. And their version of Love to Love, Rock Bottom, every song on this album is just phenomenal. So start to begin. I've never started this album and not finished it all the way through and loud.
That's a band I would say that you see in every single record store on earth, and their albums are instantly recognizable because of the work of Hypnosis and those great album covers. I mean, I think every one of their album covers is fantastic.
Yeah, they're very strange.
Yes.
But this one also, see, it's funny you say that, because as I was preparing for this, and I wanted to grab these for a bit of the visual, this album sticks out in any collection, whether it's the spine, whether it's in a crate. I always tell just from the dots and the color around, it's like, UFO, Strangers in the Night. So if I would encourage anyone in this listening to this, if you haven't heard UFO, Strangers in the Night,
give it a crack.
The other one, I don't know if you could see this from here. Can you see that?
I can see that. Yep.
You know what that is?
That's the Melvins.
That's Melvins. That's Melvins' Endless Residency. Let me grab this.
So that's in a frame, is it?
No. It is a wooden box.
Oh, wow. That is cool.
It's 8 vinyl records.
Goodness.
Of, I think it's multiple gigs that Melvins did in 2009 or something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact year. This came out in 2011. This is a package developed by Tom Hazelmeyer, of Amphetamine Reptile Records. And
that's really cool.
100 of these ones made.
Oh, wow.
And each one is of an album with bespoke artwork.
Wow.
Album Houdini. This is a Tom Hazelmeyer lino cut image of Harry Houdini. It's a little hard to kind of...
Yeah.
Lysol and eggnog. And then inside each one, I'll open Houdini here. Again, these are bespoke lino cuts.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Inside each one, there's customized. The band just customized a bunch of stuff inside here and scribbled and did a bunch of kind of goofy stuff inside the gatefolds. So yes, and they are orangey colored.
Yep.
Kind of a swirl. So again, there's only 100 of these sets that exist.
That's amazing.
And Melvins is perhaps my favorite band of all time.
I was going to ask because I do see a lot of Melvins on your Instagram feed.
Yes, I'm a little bit obsessive, and I've got. I mean, you may see these records right here. Melvins. This is my Melvins.
Oh wow! So an entire square, two squares of just Melvins, and most of that is Hazelmeyer stuff. I just do just anything that's collected. They do such. I mean, that box set is like a work of art.
Oh, it is. It is. Absolutely. And Hazelmeyer, his method of art and lino cuts. I actually had an episode with him on the show.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know what number. You can Google it. And he talks about his whole process.
Cool.
And how he comes about it. And most of these records there's only maybe 100 made. Right? And a lot of these
really nice.
Are very, very not limited, but also, recordings that they don't put out on other formats.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So there's a reason to pick them up. Did you get that box set in 2011 or did you have to track it down?
I had to track it down.
Okay.
So they did that box set and then they did another cardboard box set, which... Oh, it's somewhere else over there. It's not. It's beyond those two cubes. They did a set of I think 500 of those.
Okay.
It was and it came on black vinyl, so it was a very standard one. And I'd always thought like, oh, one day I want to get one of those Melvin, the 100, in the wooden box. And I was just patient, and then someone offered one for sale, and we struck up a deal. Luckily, they were in Australia.
Yeah.
There's a couple of hardcore Melvins fans in Australia.
You being one of them.
I'm one of them. And we share a lot of information back and forth.
Okay.
And when one of us travels to the States, like we'll try to buy records with one another in mind.
Okay. That's cool.
So, you're missing, the Sabbath one. Okay. Let me see if I can get that, and so we'll travel back and forth and we take care of one another. So one of the guys he needed to, he was tired of having it or whatever. And I said, I'll give it a great home.
Okay. Shout out to the Australian chapter of the Melvins.
Oh,
fan
yes.
club.
Absolutely.
And have you ever listened to that? I think you said it's 8 LPs. Have you listened to it start to finish before?
Not all in one day.
Yeah.
I do, I'll get in a mood to where I will listen to it. Like I'll do Houdini, then I'll do Bullhead. And then kind of by then, I got to do other stuff and I'll come back to it. I will not dip into it and dip out. It's kind of like, okay, I'm into it. We're going all the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I know what I'm listening to for the next couple of days.
That's your Melvins fix.
Yeah. And so I've also got this Mars Volta box set that I bought.
Okay.
Ironically from Hiss and Crackle. And I bought that, but I haven't had a chance to kind of go through it because I do want, it's still shrink wrapped. And but I want to give it the proper time and focus.
Yeah.
I
know what you mean.
I've got 30 minutes. I'm going to just kind of flip through. It's like, nope, I want to take, there's a week of nothing happening. That's when I'm going to focus on the box sets.
Do you have stuff that you leave in the shrink? I've actually got a Powderfinger record that they put out during COVID from that live show that they did, the live stream show. And for some reason, when it came, I just put it on the shelf. Maybe the same thing. I didn't have time to listen to it right then and there when it arrived, and it's still in the shrink. And now I'm like, do I open it? Do I just leave it in the shrink? It's lasted a year in the shrink. Do I break the seal?
I always break the seal. Like I feel very strange about records that I'm not listening to.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. And so I tend to break the seal, but that doesn't mean I'm able to listen to every record. There's a lot of records that I just don't have time to, I'll order and they'll come in and then all of a sudden, I just don't have time to listen to them.
They're waiting for the Christmas holidays.
Yeah. They're not in the shrink wrap on purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other live album that actually, you make me think about this, the Lee Morgan Live at the Lighthouse.
Okay.
The Blue Note, it's a 12 LP set.
Wow.
And that's actually upstairs. That's a live album that I'll dip in and dip out of.
Yeah.
I said I'll dip in and dip out because he recorded, I think over 5 or 6 nights, and there were different sets each night.
Yeah.
And so I can say, well, let's listen to the Friday early set, and I'll focus in on that. So that's one that I will dip in and dip out of. But yeah, most of the time when it's a box set, I'm in it,
Yeah.
Start to finish. Even outtakes. Yeah.
A lot of box sets. Is that something that you pursue?
I started to kind of do that, and I got to be more selective because they start to take up a fair bit of space.
Yeah. And
I'm finding that the bang for the buck is not as big.
Yeah. There's a lot of box sets and those super deluxe. There's a lot of that stuff coming out at the moment.
It's very few of them I really revisit. I'm curious to hear things like, I'll give you an example. Black Sabbath Volume 4.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that remaster that they did of Volume 4 is phenomenal. And I've got original copies of Volume 4, the UK, some of the US ones, and the remastered one they did. The remix one is fantastic. But then it comes with a lot of other stuff I'm not going to really use.
Yeah.
I like the booklet. I like reading about it. But once I've read it, I'm like,
you've read it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can only hear so many different versions of, them starting and stopping. And, it's like, okay, that's interesting once, but I'm not going to revisit it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm starting to be more selective about box sets. I used to get really excited, and now I'm like, yeah, I gotta be careful.
Yeah. I mean, you've got finite space, right? You've got to be selective.
100%.
So our next topic is a Saturday night spin. People take this certain ways. I guess it depends on what sort of mood you're in for a Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
You might be getting pumped up to head out to a gig or a pub or something, or you might just want to sink into a leather chair and sip a cognac or something.
Yeah.
What mood did you go for?
Well, most Saturday nights, I've got a couple of kids, and so on Saturday nights, I'm ready to relax. I do go to a fair amount of gigs these days, but I try not to. Before I go to a gig, I try not to listen to a lot of music because I know I'm going to have the whole night of music. Yep. And I thoroughly think, and I'm not a religious or superstitious guy really, but if I'm going to see a band, I'm not going to listen to them the whole day. It's as someone said, "Oh, it's bad luck to do it," and for some reason that's stuck.
Okay.
So I'm going to see Amyl and the Sniffers. I'm like, I don't want to hear anything.
Yeah.
Play that, But for Saturday nights, there's one record that I've pulled out more often than not on Saturday nights, and I'll pull that out right here. Do you know this one?
I do. John Lee Hooker.
Yeah.
It serve you right to suffer.
Yes. Not serves. It serves.
I've seen it as both.
Yeah. The earlier pressings say it serve. I think there was a pressing that even said serve. It didn't have.
Just serve you right to suffer.
I think so. But
so you were saying, oh wow, okay, so that's an early
white label promo.
Yeah.
Mono version of it.
That's very cool.
This is one of my favorite records of all time. Have you heard it before?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say I'm probably not as big a John Lee Hooker fan as you, but he's certainly in my repertoire.
Yeah. This album is, to me, now John Lee Hooker is, as you know, most people probably know, is, you know, the bluesman, and in the 50s and early 60s, and I even say to present day, bluesmen, you know, they live a pretty hard life, right?
Yeah.
But is especially pronounced in the 50s and 60s, and he had his problems. He had fidelity issues. He loved to drink. A lot of records that he recorded in the early part of his career, he didn't do all of them for money. He did a lot of them for a bottle of booze.
Wow.
Right? And so he was exclusive to one record company. John Lee Hooker was. He would record a lot of songs for different record companies under the names like John Lee Booker or JL Hook or something like that, you know, so people would know who it is.
Yeah.
But the record company he was signed to exclusively couldn't really get their talons into him.
Yeah.
And he would often do these things for, like I said, some booze or maybe $5 or something.
Yeah.
So there was always with a lot of early John Lee Hooker, it's a bit of a grab bag whether the record's going to sound good, or maybe it sounds good but the songs really weren't there, or maybe he wasn't in the right mood, or he wasn't in the right space. So there was a lot of qualifiers. So early John Lee Hooker period is very hit and miss.
Right. Okay.
Serve You Right to Suffer is, to me, the intersection of when he was healthy, he had good songs, he had an excellent recording studio, a great producer, a great backing band, and the time to be able to really hone the craft. So it's all these things kind of coming together, and this is the album that was generated from it. Even his later work after this can get a little bit bumpy, but if you really want to listen to, and people want to understand a bit more about John Lee Hooker and really hear him at his, what I believe is his best.
Yeah. That's the one.
Right to Suffer is the best. And I mean, if you listen to the emotion in his voice, Decoration Day, the song Decoration Day is a holiday where soldiers would wear their decorations and things like that. But he turns it into this song to where his wife, his girl, dies on Decoration Day. To him, going forward, Decoration Day is the day that he goes and decorates her grave.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, if you don't feel something on that, you know.
So you're in the mood to suffer on a Saturday night. You're weeping on your couch as you're listening to John Lee.
If you got a beer, you know, you just but by the way, that's probably the saddest track, obviously. But there's a lot of songs where you just kind of, it's really kind of the right pace to kind of thump your beer. But yeah, I don't want to. There are albums where the mood stays pretty consistent. Like an AC/DC album, they're all kind of bangers, right? Yeah. But I like an album that kind of has an ebb and a flow. And in fact, coming out of Decoration Day is the song Money. So you're kind of at this low, and all it starts to kind of groove again. It's a strange transition, but I like those albums that kind of take you on a little bit of a journey.
The best thing in life is free. You can give it to the birds and bees. I need money. I need money. I need money. Oh, yes, that's what I want.
Where did you pick this one up? I found, early blues and jazz really difficult to find in Australia.
Now, I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to the States pretty regularly.
Yep.
So I'll pick some up there. I with the podcast, listeners will sometimes say, "Hey, I saw this," and they know my taste, and so
that's cool.
I've got some listeners that are kind of around Third Man Records.
Very cool.
And they'll, I'll see something that's coming out, and I try not to take too much advantage of this. Yep. Every so often, if I see something, one of my John Lee Hooker albums I have It was a special pressing that was only from Third Man Records, and they were only going to do it for a day. And you had to be by one of the plants to get it. And I just sent out a note and said, hey, anyone out there near one of these things, let me know. I'm happy to reimburse you, whatever. And
brilliant.
I'll get a couple of people that, give me a shout out, and that's take care of me. That's fantastic.
They're in Third Man Records are in Nashville.
There's a Nashville one, and there's one in Detroit on Cass Corridor.
And that's Jack White's record label. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Did you, this is a bit of an aside, but what did you think of the latest
Jack White album?
Yeah. Sorry, not White Stripes, the latest Jack White album.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard the latest one, Entering Heaven Alive. I'm not even sure that one's out yet. So he released the two.
Yeah.
Together. So Entering Heaven Alive, I haven't heard. The latest one, Fear of the Dark, is
very cool.
Brilliant. I love it. I like it better than the one before.
It sounds like he's gotten heavier. I mean, he always had quite a heavy guitar tone, but that's quite a heavy album for Jack White.
Yeah, and he's experimenting with new tones and things like that. It's like you can tell it's Jack White, but you can tell there's growth and there's kind of new frontiers he's looking into. And my wife and I both listened to it. In fact, I got it at Hiss and Crackle, and I brought it home, and it's one of those albums to where I don't know if you ever do this. You probably do. You come home, and you have a little stack of records, and you're like, I'm going to listen to all of these. And this one was so special, we just listened to it twice.
Listen to it again. Yeah. I know what you mean. So the next topic we go through, you've got an interesting response to this. Maybe it's because you've got a massive collection, but a record you received as a gift, you don't like gifts, or at least you don't like records as gifts.
I don't like records as gifts. I don't like books as gifts either.
Is it because you feel like there's an obligation attached to it, or because you've got enough? Right.
100%.
Okay.
100%. It's one of these, and maybe I'm too much of a control freak in this area, but like, if someone gives me a book, I'm like, okay, what is it you're trying to push on me?
Now I have to read the book.
No, I have to read the book. I did the math one time, a couple of years ago. I did the math. It's like, okay, if I read a book a week, which is a good clip, I think, pretty ambitious, then I only have a couple of thousand books I could read. So I better be picky, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with records too, as a gift, if someone says, what do you want for your birthday? I'm able to say, I want this, but I don't, first off, I really don't like gifts. I'm fine without gifts. I've been blessed enough in this life. I don't, for you give, make me something that doesn't cost money. Write me a letter, a handwritten letter, which most people would rather pay $20 to avoid. But I would rather have something from that. But if someone insists on buying me a thing, when it comes to records, I'm so picky. I have so many. I'm kind of like, look, it's probably not going to be nearly much as enjoyed as rather than if we just went out for a drink somewhere. You bought me a coffee and we just kind of hung out for a little bit.
No, that makes sense.
I'm kind of in the mood. I'm kind of in the space now to where it's like I'm collecting memories more than things.
Yeah.
And when it comes to and when you get gifted a record or a book, invariably the question comes 2 or 3 months later, hey, did you hear it? Did you listen?
What did you think of that? Yeah.
Fuck, I have a chore now. so yeah. Now, that's not to say there's a lot of people who listen to our podcast and they're in bands and they send stuff.
Yeah, that's different.
I'm very keen on that because I want to hear what's going on, but I kind of want to do it on kind of my time. And I always, whenever a band or an artist sends a record, I always tweet it out and I always share it online. I'm always, because if a band's going to go out of their way to do that, I want to support them somehow. I quite often I insist on just sending them some money for it because I don't want a freebie for me to cost them something.
Okay.
I respect the work of the artist too much to ask for freebie stuff.
It's a great approach. How when you talk about you've got enough records, do you know how many you have? What's the size of your collection?
Wow.
So many that you don't know how many.
I don't count. I lost count. I'm kind of not interested in it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I got 2 minutes.
It sounds like a daunting task.
It is. It's kind of a psychic, burden too. I'm trying to think about, and my friend Phil we talk about, what are we going to do with our records when we die? What's going to happen to them? I don't want to leave my family a problem. And so, I know that, I want to collect about 10 records that are going to represent me as best as possible. Some of them that you've seen today, that's going to be the records that my family can keep. The rest of them just I can sell, right?
Yeah.
Don't have them end up in a tip. Don't accept some guy saying, I'll give you $1 each for them. But get them in the hands of collectors and people who would enjoy them. The guy I talked to you about, Dan, my friend who died in 2015, he actually left me his records.
Wow.
And his record collection. And I really didn't know what to do with them for the longest time. And he and I had a lot of the similar musical heroes. As the podcast grew, I started meeting and talking to some of these people, the people that Dan admired. So what I started doing with Dan's records is shipping them off to those people.
Okay.
So I would ask, Henry Rollins, hey, would you mind if I sent you a couple of records? I'd tell him a bit of the background. Okay. Yeah. Sure, absolutely. Send them over.
Amazing.
We were big Zappa fans, and so some of his records ended up in the collections of the Zappa family. I've Mr. Bungle. He and I love Mr. Bungle.
Yeah,
and so now some of Dan's records are in the collections of the guys that are in Mr. Bungle. So
wow,
to me that was like, that fueled me.
That's an incredible legacy.
Yeah,
that you've created for his collection.
And I put a piece of paper in each one that tells the story of Dan. It tells about the record, and then it tells a little bit of other information, why it's special. But it's always like if you don't listen to it or you're not interested in it, then pass it to someone who will. Yeah, but I just don't want Dan's records to sit in a box. I'll also bring them to things like the Glebe Record Fair and give them away. So if there's a kid or someone who's like, he looks like he would be open to something new, something blowing his mind. It's like, okay, well, here's a copy of the Meters. See what you think of that, So yeah. And I've only got about 4 or 5 left of Dan's records left now. So,
geez, that's amazing. That is. If you could think of a way for your collection, I mean, it's something that all collectors think about, right? What is going to happen to this thing that has great value to me and that I've, spent a long time sort of curating? It's like your own personal sort of music museum. Yeah. It will never have the same meaning to anyone else. Yeah. So, what is, as you said, as long as it doesn't end up in the tip and, or get sold to some used car salesman for cents on the dollar. I can't think of a better legacy for a collection than what you're doing with your friends. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. That made me feel real proud to be able to be the steward of this collection.
Yeah.
Now scattered around the world and
lives on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Geez, you've set a high bar for everyone's collections in the future. Everyone's going to be listening to this going, geez, I need to find a friend who'll do that with my collection.
Yeah. Well, look, there are worse missions to have, and everyone I've said, hey, would you like to have this? And they're like, yeah, that's great. And I even hear back from them sometimes. It's like, wow, Miles Davis, that's awesome. It's like, and so I know that they're listening to the exact same grooves that Dan listened to.
That's really special.
That's touching. Yeah.
So that probably is a really good point to shift to the most important record in your collection, or one of your grails. I'm sure you have many grails, but if you just pick out one for this for the purpose of this episode.
One grail. Okay. All right. So I thought grail was, what am I still looking for?
Why don't we do both?
Okay.
One you've got, one you're looking for.
Okay. So I tell you, the one that I'm still looking for, and I could find it. I could probably pay top dollar on Discogs or whatever, but that's kind of not part of the fun. You
need to dig it. You need to find it in the stacks.
Yeah, yeah. is John Frusciante's Shadows Collide with People.
Yeah. Not a cheap record.
Album?
Yeah. It's I was thinking maybe you already had that because you started collecting in the early 2000s, but
I had it in my hand.
Oh,
I had it in my fucking hand. I had it in my hand. It was 1995, Australian.
Stop it.
No, and I was at this record shop in Chatswood. It used to be right in the train station. I forgot what Time Zone Records or something like that. I had it in my hand, and I was like, oh, maybe later. Put it back, and I got something else, probably Dead Kennedys.
Oh, that's painful.
And now it's like a $500 record.
I'll be you. I do. I'll be you. No one's afraid to be called by another name. No one dares to be put.
That album is phenomenal. And look, I'm not the world's largest Chili Peppers fan. But the work of their guitarist, John Frusciante, and also Josh Klinghoffer, their solo stuff to me is distilled greatness of the Chili Peppers.
And they're both on that album, aren't they?
They're both on that album. Yeah, absolutely right. And if people out there are familiar with the Chili Peppers, but not familiar with the solo work of Frusciante and Josh Klinghoffer, I would urge you to check out the albums from Plural One, which is Josh Klinghoffer's solo work, and John Frusciante's Shadows Collide with People is probably my favorite, his best.
It's probably his best.
Yeah, Curtains, The Empyrean. There's a few others that are quite good as well. But yeah, Shadows Collide with People, I just haven't found my copy yet.
That's your white whale.
That's my white whale. That and Tool, Anima, but I think all that stuff's going to come out at some point.
So with Anima, you want an original pressing, I presume.
I would be fine with whatever they are going to come out with, and whenever they get around to it.
They'll reissue that.
Yeah.
And I mean that's high on my list as well. That'd probably be in my top 5 favorite albums of all time.
Well, I have it on good account that it's all the artwork, everything is already done. It's just going to happen at some point.
Fantastic. Well, that will be in my collection the moment it lands on the shelves.
100%. And I'd love to Lateralis, anything from them. I'm a customer.
Did you buy the outrageously priced Fear Inoculum box set?
Absolutely. And it's worth every penny. Worth every penny to me. I just listened to it again the other day. It was, just they're probably one of my favorite bands of all time. And you expect these sort of grand gestures when it comes to a product packaging from them. And to me, it's, I'm extraordinarily happy that it exists. Is it a bit of a hassle to kind of deal with and kind of, keep switching records? Yeah, a little bit, but that's okay. It's kind of, Tool always makes us work for it a little bit.
Yeah. And wait for it.
Yeah.
When you speak of packaging, I've actually still got the Lateralis CD with the amazing booklet. It's sort of clear. The pages are clear and it's layers of
Mylar.
Yeah. Really cool. So going back to John, we have a saying on the show, you never regret the records that you buy, you always regret the ones that you left on the shelf. 100%. And you almost every time you're in a record store or a record fair, you're then looking for that one you left on the shelf. It's an itch that you have to scratch.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's the thing that got away, the one that got away.
Yeah. I can't, $20. Wow. What a time. What a time to be a record collector.
And it's such a great album too. But look, they reissued the Empyrean. Is that how you say it? The Empyrean?
Yes.
Yeah. So they reissued that one. I hope that I'm holding out for the reissuing Shadows Collide, but that seems to be the one they've reissued Curtains, which is another favorite of mine.
Yeah, Shadows, I think I saw on Discogs, the average price is $800 or something like that. It's there are copies for sale for about $800.
Yeah.
If you wanted it tomorrow, you could have it. But I get it. You gotta find it.
You don't want to be that guy that pays $800 and all of a sudden you get the email that says, "Hey, they're reissuing it. Order now
exactly.
for $35."
Yeah, exactly. So a grail that's in your collection, that's in your hands.
I'm going to show you a few here.
Okay, this is exciting.
Yeah, this is the box of love. Let's see. Do I have any?
I'm guessing there'll be some Melvins in here.
Well, I got plenty of Melvins, and but I'm going to show you some really interesting stuff.
Okay.
Some historical stuff as well. You're familiar with the Nirvana Bleach the Water,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a green waterfront.
That is cool.
Yeah, I think maybe 300 of these were made.
Wow.
And Nirvana, love Nirvana. Bleach to me is their best work. And no judgment on the other releases, but this is the one that I started with, the one that's in my head, So I do love Nevermind as well, and even In Utero. But Bleach to me is my favorite work of theirs.
They're the first band that I remember hearing. The Nirvana. I distinctly remember being in a bathtub, Triple J on the radio as a kid. I must have been 5 years old or something.
Right.
They're the first music that I remember hearing and saying, "What's this? This is Nirvana." Okay, I like Nirvana.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Far out. How old are you?
35.
Ah, got it. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So I grew up, grunge kid. Grew up with grunge. Silverchair. Saw Silverchair more times than I can count in the 90s and 2000s.
They are so great. Silverchair. When I moved to Australia, Diorama was out and it's being very big. And I absolutely love that album. I remember buying at that time a bunch of CDs and for a trip back to the States and passing them out to my friends, like, "You guys got to hear this.
Get on this.
You got to listen to it." And they're like, "Oh, Silverchair, those little kids." It's like, they're not little kids anymore. You got to fucking hear it. Them and Super Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Australia punches above its weight in terms of, particularly rock bands and metal bands, like amazing local music scene.
Yeah.
As you would know. Great live music scene, great festival scene. Yeah. But Silverchair, even when they were little kids, they were kicking ass.
Yeah.
I mean, Frog Stomp I still put that on. I've still got it on cassette, actually.
The biggest crime with Silverchair is they were a 3-piece that looked like Nirvana that came after Nirvana. So everyone thought, "Oh, it's baby Nirvana." And they've probably still had to battle for it. There's still a bit of a punchline around the world because of that. But man, people who really take the time to listen, will be rewarded. Especially Diorama to me is an album that I keep going back to.
Yeah, like I think they matured massively throughout their discography, right? Yeah. Frog Stomp is, it's a very angsty, hard rock album, but they added layers. And I know Daniel Johns is still doing, he's still putting stuff out. And I think they've made a massive progression over their discography. Great band, great Australian band.
So, okay, here's another one. You can see this.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you here.
That is a beauty. So
it is.
Wow.
This is, for those of you who can't see this, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? A sample promo copy from Track Records. Now, Track Records, this is a UK pressing.
Yeah.
This is on the label, I think the managers of The Who.
Okay.
Track Records. And they signed Jimi Hendrix over in the UK before he was well known. As he was getting well known, they recorded it onto Track. They released it on Track. And this is a sample that probably went to some DJ or something trying to get some attention for this Jimi Hendrix.
Man, what a great piece of history.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. Let's see here. I've got a few others I'll throw up here. You're in Brizzy, huh?
Okay, so I knew when you said that. Man, oh man. I saw you spun this recently on your Instagram. Yeah. I don't have any Saints on vinyl. I haven't broken the checkbook out for that yet.
You haven't got, you got their first album, don't you?
No, I don't.
No.
No.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. What an awesome band.
Yeah.
And, you know, a piece of Brisbane history, piece of sort of punk rock world music history, right? That you just can't, you don't really think of Brisbane when you think of that. But, you know, it made sense with what was going on in Queensland at the time.
Yeah.
It made sense that a band like that would exist.
100%. And yeah, so Saints.
So that's a copy of Stranded, which they released themselves.
On Fatal Records, 500 were pressed. And it's really, I think, the first punk single, with the possible exception of this one, The Damned, New Rose.
Okay.
So this is a copy of a UK copy of The Damned, New Rose, out of the UK.
Is this your in case of emergency box? Do you just get all of your...
If there's a fire, yes, sir.
That's what you're leaving the house with?
Are you familiar with
the
Soundhouse tapes? So this is an original copy of Iron Maiden Soundhouse tapes. I think 500 were pressed.
Wow.
Beautiful, beautiful mint copy. Again, bought before the rush. I was a huge Iron Maiden fan as a kid.
Yeah.
And I remember they were the first band that I was just completely goofy over. I got into them for peace of mind, but they had just played San Francisco. I used to live in the Bay Area. They just played. And so I had to wait a whole nother year for them to come around.
Right.
And I'd got way into their back catalog by then. And then Power Slave came out. So I went to go see them at Power Slave, the Power Slave tour.
Yeah.
Right up front at I think it was the San Francisco Cow Palace, right up front. As soon as they hit the stage, I saw them. I was like, I almost fainted. I was like, oh, this guy, you know, I felt like I'd built the anticipation up so much. And I probably ruined my hearing at that show, but it was phenomenal.
Up the irons.
Yeah, up the irons, absolutely. Here's two others.
Yeah, I've seen these in your collection before. Descendants. Yeah,
Descendants is the very first Ride the Wild. This is, I think there were 100 pressed of these.
Jeez, wow.
1980. Here's an autographed.
That's signed, hey?
Yes, yeah. So that's a rare record, and it's all signed. And it's weird because I found this one at a record shop in Sydney, and they weren't asking much at all. I was like, what?
Wow, didn't know what they had, right?
Didn't know what they had. Yeah.
So you're a big Descendants fan.
I love Descendants.
I gather.
100%.
And growing up in the Bay Area, you had a front row seat to some pretty awesome bands, right?
I did.
That's quite the music scene there.
I did. I didn't realize how good I had it until I moved away. And not that Sydney's bad, but like Iron Maiden would go over there once or twice a year.
Yeah, we're a bit further away. It's
every
hard, right?
6 years or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, some concerts I saw. I saw the original NWA, all five of them. Yeah.
Wow.
In Oakland, which was an adventure in itself.
Yeah.
The likes of Johnny Cash. I almost saw Nirvana in a club, at the Cactus Club. I was way into Bleach, and I was like, I got to see this band. And and then they played this club not far from our house, and I remember seeing a friend of mine with a T-shirt on. I was like, "Where'd you get the T-shirt?" He's like, "Oh, they just played last week." I'm like, "Oh shit, I missed it. Oh well, I'll get it next time."
Yeah, right. There was no next time.
There was no next time. Well, next time, probably I would have had to go to a stadium.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other bands I've seen.
Big, the big four, obviously, that they came out of there. The big four of thrash metal, Metallica and Anthrax, Megadeth.
I've only seen Metallica with Cliff Burton. I've never seen him with any other bass player.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and I don't intend to. I'm not good.
Yeah, you've got to preserve that, right?
Yeah, I saw them twice. I saw them at a Day on the Green, which apparently there's video of it on YouTube. And then there's then I saw him at the Henry J. Kaiser Convention Center, New Year's Eve 1983. Metallica, Megadeth, Exodus, and Metal Church.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What a gig.
I broke 2 ribs at that show.
Yeah, what a way to ring in the new year. That would have been some mosh. Bloody hell.
Yeah. So it's pretty wild. So yeah, it's you know, and I keep telling my kids and anyone who will listen, it's like if you see a band that you're kind of somewhat interested in, go see them now, because you're going to regret not doing it. Same with, you don't remember the records that you bought as much as the ones you passed up.
Yeah.
Go see, just spend the $20, get yourself out for the night, go see this band. You'll, you know,
100%.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I think back to the last time the Prodigy toured Australia, and it was a Sunday or a Monday night. So it was a school night, and, you know, going to a gig on a weeknight or when you've got work the next day is challenging because, you know, you want to enjoy yourself. You want to have a few beers. It's going to be late. You know, you're going to be exhausted the next day. My friend he got free tickets from a promoter. Prodigy, I know it's a school night, short notice, but let's go and see them. And weeks later, Keith was dead.
Oh.
And I just thought, oh my God, I've seen him probably 3 or 4 times. I love the Prodigy.
Yeah.
Just think, I'm so glad you know, you just got it. Don't waste a moment, right? You just got to go and grab that record that you want, go and see that band that you want to see live. Just do it, because you never know what's going to happen.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Stay at home, watch Stranger Things on Netflix?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you're really worried about being dusty the next day, just drink a couple of waters between the beers. Yeah. But yeah, you won't regret seeing those bands. And that's why now I'm telling people, go see the local bands.
Yeah.
You know, I caught the chats with about 12 other people at one point, and now, you know, they're doing amazing. Same with Amyl and the Sniffers. Same with all these other Australian bands. It not only enriches the community and get you out there, get you supporting these acts, but it also, you start to help them build a platform to do greater things.
Yeah. And, you know, that was, you know, back in the day, that was the guys going to see AC/DC or Rose Tad or Hoodoo Gurus. You know, they were playing Bondi Surf Lifesaver Club, and, you know, they would have been small gigs, and then you can think back and go, geez, I saw them back in before they were massive.
Yeah.
And you don't know what band that's going to be in Australia, right?
Sometimes it's the opening band. Sometimes you're like, I'm going to see band X, and band Y is way down on the building. You're like, oh shit.
And then you're at the merch bar grabbing their latest album.
Yeah. Oh, and grab the record, especially if they have a record. But if they don't have a record, grab a T-shirt or whatever like that. You know, I've got a ton of T-shirts that is just, you know, the $20 at the merch table sends not only a financial signal to the band, but also I call I learned this from Steve Pulitz, attaboys, right? You know, gives them the confidence, like, okay, you know, people are interested, people are, you know, and then I take the shirt, and if I'm not going to wear it, I give it to my kids, or I give it, but, you know, if you can do it, always invest in an art and artists, and, you know, makes your life and everyone's life much richer that way.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Nate, I won't take up any more of your time. Really appreciate you jumping on and taking us for a bit of a dig through your collection. Those were some really special albums that you shared, and thanks for sharing the story of your friend as well, and that legacy that you're carrying on with his collection. It's really incredible. Really appreciate everything you do. Love the podcast. I'd recommend everyone jump on if you're interested in music history, vinyl, culture, anything to do with that. Listen to the Vinyl Guide and give Nate a follow as well. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure, man. Cheers.
The Groovy Guys are Tom Kennedy, Dan Lozier, Chris Palumbo, and Matt Carvalho. With your host, Tom Kennedy. Music by Dan Lozier, post-production by Matt, and album art by Chris.
I better go, though. My wife just texted me and said the dog's vomited twice upstairs. So I got
it. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers.